Welcome to another episode of Conduct Detrimental. I'm Dan Lust. A party episode this week. Dan Wallach, Stephanie Weissenberger, Taryn Sharma, and we're going to be joined by a guest in a little bit, AJ Perez. How about a collective what's up, gang?
What's up, gang?
What's up, gang?
So, Dan, our first episode back since you have now stepped foot back on U.S. soil. How's it feel?
Yeah, it feels like the ending of Midnight Express. I don't know if any of you guys saw that movie, escaping from like a Turkish prison. Well, it wasn't that severe, but my flight back from Russia directly to it wasn't even direct. It was 3 days, 2 nights, 2 hotel rooms, 3 airports. I ultimately made it all the way back, but it took a lot out of me, and it really wasn't until yesterday or the day before that I got my bearings back. So it's good to be home. And I'll be here for a while, so looking forward to reacquainting myself with the apartment and the beach,
and just normal time zones. How about that, Dan? What we're going to do this episode, we're going to really focus in on one topic. And Steph, we're going to give you a lot of credit here. Friend of the show who's going to join us a little bit, AJ Perez at Front Office Sports, broke a story, which we're going to get into all the details with him. But the gist of the story is that the House Oversight Committee, while looking into the Washington Commanders, basically heard some testimony, found some evidence of potential Washington cooking the books. And then, the question started popping up on Twitter. Will this require Dan Snyder to sell his team? So what Stephanie did is basically took a thread from all the little trinkets and nuggets over time that we've heard on Washington and put it together in a thread that really took off. So Steph, you did an appearance, on the radio shows. I saw in your replies, people were trying to get you on their podcast. So, credit to you. Sometimes there can be a story, but that's why the lawyers are here to dig a little bit deeper. So, and also, Steph, congrats. I saw you changed your handle on Instagram. Steph, the lawyer now. What happened to Steph? Explain.
I did.
It's not cool enough for you?
I was like, maybe I'll change it, make it a little bit easier. Stay tuned. The Twitter handle might get rid of the underscore soon.
The underscore.
So be on the lookout.
Listen, if Weissenberger wasn't hard enough to spell, you throw an underscore at the end. It's problematic. And I know you've told me, there's another S Weissenberger. No, there's not. That's not a real thing. You just made that up.
Well, Twitter wouldn't let me use it without the underscore. So who knows? Maybe I'll become Steph the lawyer on Twitter in addition to Instagram. You
guys will laugh. This is a true story. So on Facebook, I grew up as Danny, which maybe you guys didn't know. So as I grew older, I want to be Dan, right? I want to be known as Dan. So I went to Facebook and I tried to change my name from Danny Lust to Dan Lust. And it goes, you cannot do that. Your name involves pornographic words. You can't change that. And I'm like, you can keep that word. That word's going to stay the same. It's the first name that needs to be changed. Mark, if you're listening. Yeah, listen, I just want to change my first name. It shouldn't be that big of a deal. But we're going to have AJ on. Steph, we're going to put you on the panel. I guess before we do that, let's just we'll hit some business. Themis Barview sponsored the UVA softball tournament. And Hunter Bedard was on our podcast a couple weeks back. He was saying that Florida's going to run stuff. They're going to go back to back. They're going to be the first softball dynasty, if that exists. Didn't go so well for Florida. Didn't go so well for our friend Hunter. I think they lost the first 2 games. Let's just say they were not the championship. And then I started digging around. I'm like, who won? I know Florida didn't. And then somebody sent me the Obama meme. Taryn, I feel like you'll know this. When Obama gives the medal to himself?
Yeah.
The winner of the UVA softball tournament was UVA. Not once, not twice. My understanding is that they won both the men's side and they won the co-rec side. So maybe we should investigate. Maybe there's a sports law controversy in there. How does a team that hosts the tournament win both legs of the tournament? Maybe they're picking the refs. Maybe they're deciding which tree is a home run, which is a foul ball. Maybe there's something here, team.
Dan, it's almost like Dan Snyder hiring someone to investigate his own organization.
Would you look at that?
Except we are independent. We are no Beth Wilkinson over here, okay? We will do this the right way. But again, shout out to Themis. Those guys sponsored it. I said, I'm going to be there in person next year. So maybe Conduct, we're sponsoring the New York Law School Sports Law Symposium. So maybe we'll sponsor a team in some way, shape, or form. Okay, let us get into the interview with AJ. Yeah, we'll take it from there. So AJ, people will know, is a sports reporter at Front Office Sports. He's been on with us a number of times. And wouldn't you know, friend of the show, broke the biggest story in the NFL in the past week. So without further ado, we will turn it over to AJ Perez. AJ, welcome to Conduct Detrimental. Quite the story you broke, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So little shake and bake action. You broke the story during the Final Four. You had a story trend that had nothing to do with college basketball while the Final Four was going on during the Duke-UNC game. And then our own Stephanie, applied some of her legal analysis on top of your report. And what we had was the beautiful blending together of sports business and sports law, what resulted in a viral thread. Steph, was that your first viral thread?
Cleveland Guardians was up there when I made a thread on that one, but I mean, this one definitely surpassed. I just reached the over 1,000 likes. So.
Wow.
All right.
For a very niche sports business, sports law article, I'd say that's viral. It's not like viral, but in our world, that's certainly big. So let's do something special, guys. We got, the three of us up here. We got obviously myself, we got Dan, we got Taryn, and then we'll make you two our experts here. Sports law, sports business. What do you guys say? Does this sound like this makes sense?
Well, let's do it.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, so I think only logical. AJ, you set off this firestorm. So the report that you broke was an interesting one. We were having a lot of fun with it. Dan Snyder, we made the joke for years, sports law bingo to a certain extent. This was not one that I saw on my bingo card. Maybe someone else had it. But, the House Oversight Committee, we've mentioned a couple times on this podcast, has been investigating, really poking around the whole organization. But their main premise was really looking for sexual harassment, toxic workplace, sexual assault. And it seems like during the process of this investigation, what they stumbled onto was potentially evidence of Washington cooking the books. So I think it's quite the headline, but it's a little bit of karma, right? Snyder has done everything under the sun. Wouldn't you know, you allow Washington, the government to poke around your organization. They lift up the hood. Sometimes you find some other stuff. So AJ, why don't you explain what you uncovered and how that influences the House Oversight Committee's investigation?
I had a little indication a couple of weeks ago. I got a tip about some kind of shift in the investigation. Did no idea what that was. And these oversight committees do not share information with us unless they want to. And, but I started knocking on doors. I actually literally knocked on doors 2 weeks ago on Capitol Hill, the 3 House office buildings. I went around to pretty much every member, both on the GOP and the Democratic side, which is running this, which runs the House and runs this committee. And just to make them, just let them know that I was onto something. And this was days before I went down to West Palm Beach for the owners' meetings. So by the time I got down to West Palm Beach, I had pretty much a strong indication that it was something financial. And I actually looped in a couple of the team executives about that, about that whole, possibility that they're shifting. I had a couple sources by Tuesday, and then a leak source tells me while I was down there that they had known about this. I had no idea what this was, but it was something financial. And then, fast forward to Thursday, I get back, a day after I get back, we published a story. But at the same time, the Washington Post does, I knew they were on it. I don't know. They didn't have as nearly as much information as I did. That story took off. That story actually performed better than than the Saturday story, which is kind of shocking. So then Saturday, during the Final Four, we were in between my editor. It took me most of the day to confirm what I had. And then I reached out to the team for comment 2 hours before the story went up. And by the time it went up between the two games, around the time the second game started, that's when we ran with it. And I was no one hasn't been disputed. They dispute what the validity of, what this person knows, but not what I reported. That's kind of brings us to here. And I'm working on a couple other angles currently as we speak, but I'll get back to it after this.
Well, if you want, we're with you for a few more minutes. If you want to break any news here, you're certainly more than welcome to this. It's a safe space. No one listens to this podcast. No, I think, and Stephanie and I were joking about this. Like Stephanie, as our listeners should know, Steph will post the audio soon, but Steph did an appearance on the Team 980 in Washington talking about your report and talking about a thread that she did that kind of unpacked maybe evidence of financial improprieties dating back a number of years. So when you report a story like this, we can talk about defamation or any type of lawsuit. Dan Snyder is no stranger to suing people for what he claims could be false reporting. You got to be very careful. So I think, AJ, to your point, I think people need to know, posting a story like this about Dan Snyder comes with probably a few more checks that you would normally have to, because Snyder's a guy that would come after you. So I don't know. I mean, it sounds like you verified this up and down, and then I'm seeing other people running with it. And I have not heard any backtracking in the story. So
it was funny because I was on the Next Woman Up podcast a couple of weeks ago, saying how hard it is to report on Snyder. You mentioned he likes to sue, and I actually during my reporting found out that I would have sued that grandma who got sued for $80,000, the season ticket holder. But years ago, I was like, wow, I had no idea about any of this. I'm like, okay, I would have sued her too. So it was kind of like, or I don't fault Snyder for doing that, but you got to be very careful. And part of it is because I live here and you hear a lot of rumors and you hear a lot of innuendo, and most of the time it doesn't check out. This didn't come from those kind of people. I know a lot of at least former employees, and they all have NDAs and they don't talk to me. So I didn't get any information from anybody any of my friends, plus they weren't even in this department, any of these financial departments or the ticketing department anyway. So you have to be careful. And yes, he did sue the city paper. And now, unfortunately, the city paper just announced layoffs and they're going to end their print publication. Not because of Snyder. This is years and years ago. Snyder sued the city paper. But you have to be careful. Not only that, it's because I know their attorneys, and I know their spokespeople, and I like I said, I live here, so I don't want to run with anything that's unsubstantiated. And I think I did. So it was. And, I have more that I can't report yet, but there's certain things, that let's just say that the people I've talked to around the NFL or formerly in the NFL are not shocked about some of these allegations, and we did not link him to Snyder. We did not even, and these are all allegations. We don't know if this actually took place, how long it took place, and definitely if it did, who authorized such.
Steph, I'm going to give it to you really quick, then we'll open up to the panel. AJ, you said something interesting. You didn't link it to Snyder. Now, what Steph did, what we do as lawyers, right? We take evidence and we try to make some conclusions, right? We just try to see how the dots connect, and we try to come up with some hypothesis. So that's essentially what Stephanie did. So, Steph, just in a very 30,000-foot level, then our ferocious panel up here will kind of come after you guys with some questions. But maybe you can really kind of unpack where you took AJ's panel and how you connected the dots through some years back of various reports, legal filings on the Snyder case.
Yeah, definitely. So I remember seeing AJ's story, obviously, right when he posted it on Saturday. And my immediate thought was financial improprieties. I feel like we've seen this before somewhere. And so then I started doing a little bit of a deep dive on PACER, which is the court access system for federal cases. And I started looking into the 3 minority owners lawsuit against Snyder when they had initially tried to approach a potential buyer and they wanted to sell their shares. But, they started this lawsuit because Snyder was not allowing them to do that. And then we know that this ended up going into arbitration because the NFL intervened. But I was just immediately thinking, there was something there that we'd already seen. And it was definitely that one text message from John Moog, who was the 3 minority owners' financial consultant throughout the entire sale process, where he essentially threatened Snyder and said, I know something that you probably don't want people to find out. And if you continue on this path, you continue playing this game, I will reveal it because you can play this game too. And so I just started connecting the dots in that sense, in terms of these minority owners didn't receive their annual dividends right before they started, approaching buyers about selling their shares. And then you pair that with this text message from a financial consultant. And then you pair that with the fact that, because Dan Snyder ended up purchasing those shares, he didn't have to open up the books and records of the team to anyone else because there were no potential buyers to look into it. He obviously already knew all those answers. And so it's definitely a tricky situation. I would say that because there really hasn't been any super, super concrete evidence yet. All of the court documents are very heavily redacted in a lot of places where I think there probably is a lot more detail there. And I'm sure Congress, hopefully, I would assume, can get those documents unredacted. But I think, this might be the last straw because the owners, obviously, and the NFL as a whole, stealing revenue, you can't do that. And this is something that is directly affecting them, and they clearly should not be happy about it.
And it also affects the players. I mean, that's a point that gets lost. If this, and this is all allegations, if this went across many seasons, and it went across other CBAs even, that is a lawsuit that the PA was probably going to pursue. Even if it shifted we're not, from what I can, I don't know exactly what percentage is alleged who have been kept out of the 40% of the ticket sales that go to the league, then that of net ticket sales, and then for home games, and then that gets dispersed out to visiting teams. If that went across several seasons and it shorted the NFL players' money, that's a much bigger issue than shorting the multi-billionaire owners' money. That's going to cause a big headache.
Let's open it up to the panel. Dan, Taryn, you guys are up.
Yeah, I want to talk more about the reasoning behind the withholding. When we think of Dan Snyder as being this billionaire, he just bought this $50 million house. AJ, you said something interesting on Al Galdi's podcast earlier this week, that it's possible that Dan is actually hurting for money. Dan Snyder, obviously. And then, Steph, you pointed out that a lot of this arose because Snyder withheld the dividend payments from the 3, the former minority owners. How legitimate or how realistic do you think it is that Dan Snyder is just kind of like house poor, that he is hurting for money and is skimming from the franchise in order to pay other expenses?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's definitely a possibility there. And that just goes back to when he exercised his right of first refusal for, buying these 3 minority owners' shares. He, according to the shareholders agreement, he was supposed to put forth an offer that was equal to the offer of the potential buyers. And his was apparently significantly less. And so, there is a world where he could be hurting for money. That could be why he allegedly has 2 books, because he's trying to keep as much money in his pocket as he can. And, it's clearly not a good situation that he's in, because now he has even more eyes on him for completely different reasons other than the already disgraceful actions that he has already been investigated for. And so I think he's really just continuing to dig a deeper hole for himself.
Yeah, it was always odd why he didn't take the offer. There was an offer for about the same amount of money that he ended up buying the 3 co-owners out for, from 2 venture capitalists in the Bay Area in California. And he turned that down. You could speculate that he turned it down because he didn't want to open the books, as he would have had to them. And then that's 2 other people, or maybe more. And you figure out they have lawyers and accountants on their end to look into it. It would be amaze me that any owner, Snyder or anyone else, any NFL owner, because they print money. You get $300 million a year for this new TV deal. That more than covers your player personnel costs. When you factor in coaching and everything else, it pretty much covers almost a lot of your operating costs. And that doesn't take into account the other streams they have, both from sports betting, ticket sales, and everything else, all these other partnerships that the owners get a piece of. And also, a lot they don't have to share. They only have to share this 40% really with the league for tickets. It amazes people I talk to around the league that he could be hurting for money. And I did report in that Thursday story, and one of the 2 bullets that no one really seems to take a look at. The one was, there are some concerns that were expressed, about his debt load. And he took, he paid nearly $1 billion a year ago and had to get a debt waiver. He financed a great portion of that money, which he can. I mean, dude, any owner, when your franchise is worth $4.5 billion, the banks are going to give you money, and they're going to give you money at a good rate. So it's shocking to those around the league that he could have money issues. And there's no indication outside of the rumors you hear around here, that he does. But as Stephanie pointed out, there was some twists and turns during that. And it was this was all amid the Loretta Lynch was looking into it. She was going to be the arbitrator on that case before that, basically, or the investigator, I should say. She was the investigator in that case before that ended, because they sold it because Snyder got approval to buy out those 3 co-owners.
One other thing is, as you mentioned, the debt, the NFL owners allowed him to exceed the debt thresholds in buying out this additional these 3 owners. So how much of this level of forgiveness, the permissiveness from his fellow owners, is because they think he is the one that's going to end up getting the Washington franchise a new stadium? Is that what this all boils down to?
Really, it's about they don't want to rock the boat. I mean, I was told, even if everything that I reported and it's true, it's not, well, it's true because it was a testimony. But if what this person testified to and possibly gave over information about proves out, and even if the players got shorted and there could be some kind of fine or anything else, or some kind of givebacks to the PA, that there's still no guarantee that he'll be forced out. There was no guarantee. I found out Richardson would have been forced out if he didn't sell the Panthers. I've said this before, but being an NFL owner is like being a justice on the Supreme Court. It takes a lot to be forced out, and they don't want to set a precedent. The other leagues did. 2 other leagues did recently with Major League Baseball with Frank McCourt, and then you had obviously Sterling with the Clippers, but in the NBA. But it's a totally different ballgame. It's a different system. Goodell has the authority to put someone up for a vote, but that's not going to happen. It's going to have to be led by a groundswell of ownership, and the other owners will all have to come together, and they all have to say, this is enough. We're tired of this. And right now, it's not there yet. And I respect Mike Florio and his reporting over at Pro Football Talk that it could be, but it's, from what I talked to, it's going to take a lot more than what I reported being linked directly to Snyder even.
AJ, I've got a couple of questions for you. You know, I've been following your reporting on this going back a couple of months. I'm getting the sense that the House Oversight Committee has attention deficit disorder. You know, going back at the very beginning, the focus was on the documents that the committee was demanding of the National Football League, that there were these assertions of an attorney-client privilege, you know, regarding some of the investigatory documents that Beth Wilkinson had. We haven't heard any talk about that lately. In addition, you reported that Representative Jackie Speier, Congresswoman from California, who's a member of the House Oversight Committee, had thrown the gauntlet out there in the public domain about enacting legislation which would be harmful to the National Football League's interests. Number one, the repeal of the limited antitrust exemption under the Sports Broadcasting Act. I raised the issue separately. Well, why not revisit the issue of maybe federal guidelines around relocation to really turn the screws on the National Football League? What, if anything, can you report on any progress concerning any of those other important areas? Because it just seems like the focus shifts from one subject to another. Well, what about the documents? What about those other areas of federal law? Where do we stand with those?
Yeah, this has been going on. Representative Maroney, who's the chair of the committee, there's multiple hearings every week, it seems like. There's one today. We're going from Postal Service to FDA to VA. That's all in the government purview. It makes sense. Those are government agencies, and you know, they should be held accountable and made better. But yeah, so this started in October after the Gruden emails. So this is the conspiracy theory. Like back when Beth Snyder leaked these emails, never believed it, because basically Beth Wilkinson's investigation ended in July. The team was fined. He stepped down for some who knows why reason from day-to-day operations. But then it started days later. This committee started this investigation, and hasn't got much cooperation. I have some news on that later today, hopefully, and where the documents stand. But we're not. Yeah, well, there's more. I got it. I have to do the exclusive through my company. You guys don't, you know, they do pay me.
We would have scheduled the podcast later had we.
No. Well, okay. I'll say this. They've gotten more documents than they had before recently. So I can say that. And
I want to interrupt you for a second on these documents. Congress isn't like civil litigation. There's no such thing, or there's a question as to whether the attorney-client privilege is even applicable in congressional hearings. The league and the third party, you know, repository of these documents, they can be held in contempt of Congress if they don't produce documents pursuant to the subpoena. So has there even been a document subpoena propounded?
No, we have no indication that subpoenas have gone out for documents or to compel anybody to testify at this point. That in my story last week, I reported strongly being considered, and it looks like they're headed that direction. But as of right now, there's no indication that they've used it. They've gotten these documents from this latest documents, and I don't even know what. They're still going through it, I'm hearing. I don't know how many thousands of pages were sent over, but you know, but those were documents were given over voluntarily. I would say voluntarily because they've been fighting for them since October, but they got some more information in recently.
How about the antitrust exemption repeal? Where does Representative Speier and where do the other committee members stand with respect to possible legislative repercussions?
Yeah, Jackie Speier was actually told me, she was basically, you know, it's outdated. They should change it. They don't need this antitrust. You know, it was given to them so they could basically organize, the owners can come together and have one TV deal for the entire league. So that's kind of how that came about in the 60s. And obviously the TV landscape's changed. Like, well, they're streaming now. They don't need this anymore, you know, kind of thing. But
somebody has to introduce a bill. Is anyone going to introduce a bill?
That's the whole thing. Well, they always use the antitrust as a threat. They never ever seem serious to actually change it. And you know, we're in a war right now. There's a war in Ukraine right now. There's a lot of things going on. We have high inflation. So there's a lot of blowback. I mean, even amongst former Democratic members of this committee I've talked to are like, why are they on this right now? Like, what's the end game? It looks like they're singling out Snyder. And this is somebody who is not friendly with Snyder. Like, it looks like they're singling out. They're worried, like, then if this, and also the clock is ticking. If this House changes to the GOP side in the next election, this investigation's over. So the clock's ticking there. Whether they have to do a subpoena hearing, whatever. Yeah, Jackie Speier said she expects a hearing and to get able to testify. But until I think the next should have dropped would be the knowledge of that subpoenas have gone out. And I know people, this is all secondhand, who are almost welcoming the subpoenas because there's so much NDAs all over the place in this story. And it makes it hard to report. And that's why they exist, I think. But there's definitely, there's questions of whether how long, not how serious, because they're taking this seriously, but it's a large committee, but they have some things going. You mentioned the attention, maybe some ADD going on, but as somebody who has it, I can understand that. But
by the way, I think I have it. I didn't mean anything.
No. Oh no. I use the words. It's fine. So it's kind of. So it's like, she has so much, the committee has so much stuff going on at once. And this is just one of them. And you could argue it's among the least, for the nation, it's probably the least worrisome when it comes to when you're thinking about other government agencies who may not be operating correctly, that which is their purview. But it's, people I've talked to, even former Democrats who are on the committee are worried that if it changes, what if this committee starts going after one person, like they seem to be going after Dan Snyder? That sets a bad precedent that especially in this climate we have. And if you watch the roundtable, it was partisan, very partisan. This is not the bipartisan hearings under that the same committee did for the baseball steroid era. Where there was actually a serious threat to antitrust at that point. I think that was serious, and I think Tom Davis and Henry Waxman, the head of the committees, Republican and Democrat, worked together on that. There's no cooperation this time.
It may be illegal, AJ, because the legislative committee or the House Oversight Committee's purview and investigative powers are limited to lawmaking, right? To review and consider prospective laws going forward. What they're not allowed to do is to take on a law enforcement function and target individuals and investigate individuals. And it really seems that this committee's work straddles that line. And one possible line of attack for Dan Snyder and the National Football League is that this is really not about, prospective lawmaking around the validity of NDAs. This is really a targeted investigation, selectively singling out somebody that is viewed as a bad actor. And that might go beyond this committee's constitutional authority. So that could be one of the reasons why there's a lot of talk and not necessarily a lot of action behind it.
Yeah, and the motivations of the committee is, there's always theories about why they got going on this, besides the media exposure that was created with the Gruden emails.
So, Steph, let me jump back to you quick, and then I want to make sure we don't lose sight of this, right? Snyder's story is one piece of a larger puzzle. And AJ, you pointed out, Mike Florio has some, I don't know if it's reporting or just his hunches that this is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Snyder, we've been to this well before, whether he's going to be forced to sell the team. One thing that we haven't mentioned on this Zoom are reports that Dan Snyder has really been away from the team, away from the front office for, I don't know, I think it's about a year. So not my reporting, AJ, I don't think yours, but my understanding is that maybe an off-the-record punishment coming out of the...
That's what it seemed like, a double secret probation. It was... It's been so, I talked to Jerry Jones an hour before Goodell basically hinted at reinstatement in a news conference down there in West Palm Beach at the Breakers. And it was just like, it was like, what did he just say? I mean, part of his comment about needing to talk to Snyder now makes sense because the league at that point had known for at least a week or so about this testimony that was given. So needing to talk to Snyder part makes sense to me now. Didn't make sense to me at all that Tuesday. But it didn't make any sense because his people said it was to concentrate on the stadium. And, there was the league didn't, Beth Wilkinson didn't recommend him that we know of, didn't recommend of him to step down. There may have been other recommendations that why there wasn't a written report, but that could have impacted Snyder. Yeah, there was nothing public that he couldn't run the team, that he couldn't be around the team. And he's been in exit interviews. He's been talking to coaches this entire time since July, since Tanya, his wife, became the co-CEO and co-owner. He's had involvement, and he was never the most involved owner anyway. I mean, his early days, yes. When he took over the team the first probably 5-6 years, very, very hands-on. But over the last few, after he'd been criticized for being too hands-on, he let other people run it, and you could blame Dan Snyder for not putting the best people in those positions for sure. But you can't fault him for everything, all the crap that's gone on, not every single little thing over the last, 20, almost 23 years. A good portion of it is his fault. The biggest thing is the team sucks. The team doesn't win. So when the team doesn't win, you have your leash is so short among fans. They're going to come down on you for every little thing. If he took the team to the Super Bowl last season, if he took a team, won a Super Bowl during his 22 plus years, this would not probably be as big of a deal.
They signed Albert Hainsworth once. That was a big deal.
Oh yeah, that was great. Yeah, making him almost get heat stroke doing his drills there. Oh yeah, that was great. But there's just certain things. You can't remove everything. You can't link everything to Dan Snyder, even though he is kind of he's a source for a lot of it. Yes.
Steph, I'll give you this one. This is my last one. On the, maybe the next chapter of this saga, there was one of the former employees provided testimony that I think was maybe the impetus of this, the new ticket story. There's also testimony that was provided about, this kind of video coming out, this, scantily clad cheerleader photo shoot video. So there are rumblings about defamation lawsuits being filed against the team. I don't know if you've seen this stuff, but I'm going to hand it to you. Do you think there's any? Dan Snyder's filed defamation suits before. I mean, do you see another one coming out of this testimony?
Defamation as in against the employee who testified?
I actually think it's defamation from the employee. So the employee, I think, is threatening to sue the organization.
Yeah, Lisa Katz did threaten that basically, and the team was like, "Bring it on!" Basically, that's their response. So Steph, go for it.
I mean, personally, it's pretty hard to bring a defamation suit because the elements are so clear, and the statement has to be false. It has to have caused injury. It has to be a statement of fact, which could be a big thing also. So, if what the team is saying is true, then clearly they can't bring a defamation suit because it would be factual. I mean, I don't think that they have a strong case in terms of defamation just based on the actual legal elements. But I do think that if the team was hiding something, they would have responded in the same exact way that they did. They didn't really come out with a very strong statement, in my opinion. And I think that might clue people into the fact that they might be starting to get a little bit worried on their end too.
Speaking of strong statements, as AJ alluded to, Lisa Banks, the attorney for the former Washington employees, two of which we've had on our show before, basically came forward with a statement that said Jason Friedman, who served as the VP of sales for the team from 96 to 2020, testified truthfully and with evidence. So she's basically saying, the fact that Washington is saying that, there's no evidence and there's no support, that essentially amounts to defamation. And Friedman, unlike Dan Snyder, is not a public figure. So can have certainly.
This is I'm going to get into that a little bit. I was shocked The Athletic ran his name. I mean, that we're talking, I knew the name. I know the name of somebody else who testified, who was more of a public figure than a longtime ticket employee. I thought it was bad form. I thought running his name, having somebody he looks like under an NDA who can't respond, running that name is doing, especially not knowing the full story, because that story there was something turned over, and Katz confirmed my reporting from Saturday that there was evidence turned over. That evidence apparently could back up his story. So, having The Athletic put his name out there, which I was shocked that happened. So now his name's in the public domain. So then the commander's like, we didn't name him. I'm like, well, you just came down on the employee. People can put two and two together. I don't think this would be a defamation type thing. But
he's not a victim of a sexual assault. Naming him,
it's known. Yeah, but he's still under but he can't respond. I mean, that's the whole thing. It's like these are supposed to be secret hearings, and I know I got whiff of it. Yes, I reported on it. But these, putting someone's name in the public domain who can't defend himself because he contractually, as the lawyer said, contractually unable to, that's tough.
He put himself into the public domain by agreeing to testify. Is this going to be like a secret, shadow proceeding without any transparency around it? We're going to have these shadow congressional committees meeting with people in secret. I think this rises to the level of newsworthiness, and being named doesn't subject him to any greater legal jeopardy because everyone knew who he was.
Everybody knew who he was. I just think it's getting him out there, getting his name out there. It just kind of opened up a can of worms. People are going to be out there looking to talk to him, and he's going to be even more at a danger of talking to somebody that he probably shouldn't have.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, AJ, in the sense that, it should be his right to come forward if he wants to in the public domain. Obviously, he probably testified thinking that his name wasn't going to get out. And I don't think it's right for, a publication to go ahead and make that choice for him, especially when everything that has been surrounding the Washington Commanders, whether it's the financial improprieties or the sexual harassment allegations, it's a sensitive subject. And so I don't think they should have named him, but it's out there now. So we'll see what happens.
That's the whole thing. If he was allowed to talk as freely to the committee as he would to be to us and the public, no problem with it. But I just knowing how these teams, it's not just the Commanders, it's it's universal in pro sports, these NDAs. It's part of your severance package typically too. When you leave the team, you have to sign it. So, and if you violate it, they can come after you. And I think some teams probably more viciously than others do that. So that was my whole point. And also, what I want to know, it's the kind of question for you guys. The Democrat side has not confirmed the evidence that was turned over. That was my source, that there was something turned over. That's why I said non-first person testimony. The evidence that was referenced in this former Ticket employee's lawyer on Monday, and I have questions of whether they could, there's whistleblower protection, but it depends on when he obtained it and how he obtained it, whether they haven't acknowledged that they have it, the Democratic side yet, or and because it wasn't in the transcript. The transcript of the testimony did not mention any evidence. So maybe I'm guessing maybe they're kind of trying to figure out. This is all my guess, that they could try to figure out the providence of it to see if it's going to be able to use to back up what he says.
I mean, your guess is as good as ours, right, AJ? You're in the weeds. I mean, I imagine we haven't heard the end of the House Oversight Committee's saga and additional potential more testimony on it, but we'll see. I mean, this has been ongoing. Somebody asked, I know Steph, they asked you on the team, our friends Chris Russell and Pete Medhurst, how much longer could this go? This has been going on. It's been going on at least before the Super Bowl. So I don't know.
October now. It's been going on a long time.
So that's what happens. And Dan alluded to it. There's a reason you don't want the government sniffing around in your stuff. So I don't know, AJ, to your point, I don't know when that would come out, but if there is evidence floating around out there, and now there's being public media reports referencing and statements referencing additional evidence, I'd be surprised if that doesn't see the light of day. It would be
I think that would be. I don't know whether we'll get it or just it'll stay at the committee, but obviously I would love to see it. But that was just kind of like a reason why they and the Democratic side does not say much of anything. I got the statement before the Thursday story. That's pretty much all I got out of them for a couple months.
To be clear, with the defamation stuff, just jumping back, we didn't name him is not necessarily like a dispositive defense. You don't necessarily need to name someone to be liable for that. It's just so that they can be reasonably identifiable, I think is the standard. But so
defamation de quad, or so, it's been so many years since law school. There are two types of defamation, and one is where the person is named, and then the other is where you provide enough information where it's pretty clear who we're talking about, even if the person is not explicitly named. Did I have the title right? Defamation de quad. It's a term in the law to distinguish between two types of defamation, both of which are actionable.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, I think that's right. Sounds right.
It's been 20 years since my media law class, so I'm not.
The name AJ Perez. I'm not going to mention his name, but a certain reporter who breaks stories for front office sports. Now you can't sue me. I didn't name you, but it covers situations like that.
Yeah, so, and that's why I took pains not to even say that he was a Ticket employee in that first story. Former Ticket employee.
You mentioned how long this has been going on with the committee. Is it just kind of a wait and see from here, or is there anything that you're really looking out for that we can expect in the next couple of weeks?
I think if they did get this document dumped, which I'm trying to verify, they're going to be going through that, and who knows what they received out of it. It looks like it's the largest document, cache of documents they've gotten since October when this all started. So it depends on what that shows, and I think if they believe what they were told by this former employee, and especially if he provided any kind of evidence to back that up, I would see subpoenas, outside of after these documents are gone through. I would see subpoenas for either more information or actually testimony. I think, and that's going to be the strongest indicator we'll have an actual hearing. which Jackie Spear told me that was pretty much expected with, and Goodell doesn't have to be compelled to testify. He will testify voluntarily. Now, anybody else they try to get in there, fight a subpoena or need a subpoena, we're pretty far down the road, and it's not, they're gonna. I don't expect that all this work to not have a hearing, and you have to have the hearing before December because or at least early January because it'll probably have to be before the November election. Even I think they're going to have to, over the next 3 or 4 months, they're going to have to move on this, or else it's been a waste of resources. And you can knock them for having a hearing, but if they worked how many hours and how many over many hours over many weeks, months, and it doesn't come to a hearing, that was a wasted effort. And I think they're going to want to have some kind of finality of it. And it's going to be I almost said that it's going to be a very contentious one, because the GOP side we saw is going to, from that statement Thursday and from the roundtable hearing, they are not playing around. They don't think this should be any part of the government oversight committee's purview. The House should not be weighing in on a private entity like the NFL, or especially one team or one team owner. They don't see the benefit to the taxpayers. Now, whether that's motivated by politics, because Snyder is a big GOP donor, who knows? I'm not going to venture a guess there. I will note that though.
AJ, Steph, thank you for being on the hot seat with us. But obviously more to come on this. We had a lot of Washington people looking at our feed, a lot of former employees. So obviously, we'll keep our eye on it. AJ, thank you for breaking the news here. And thank you for coming on, buddy.
Thanks for having me.
So that was AJ Perez. You can find him on social media at by AJ Perez. Great handle. AJ is certainly a wealth of information. Dan, let's start with you. What'd you think?
Well, AJ is always a good interview. And the amazing thing about him is he breaks stories, no matter who he works for. USA Today, Front Office Sports, he has this knack for sort of getting behind the doors, so to speak, and get the kind of information that no one else is able to break. But I'm a little bit concerned here. This investigation seems to lack focus. It moves from one topic to another, and I don't know. I'm a little skeptical as to whether, I don't care what kind of money problems he has. I don't think any one of us wouldn't trade places with Dan Snyder financially in like 2 seconds flat. And the notion that he would be skimming money from his fellow owners on nothing more than sort of a lower level employee of the football team without any kind of documentation, I'm not quite ready to assume facts not in evidence. I find this to be incredibly difficult to believe. But on a larger scale, the seemingly all over the map focus of the House Oversight Committee, they just seem to be chasing breadcrumbs and not honing in on the real issue of sexual harassment and the notion of these NDAs, which was the purpose why this committee was formed and the purpose of this investigation. They seem to be just going after Dan Snyder and not staying with the issue at hand, which is sexual harassment in the workplace. And that is a major red flag as far as I'm concerned, because it shows that maybe they don't have anything and they're going to win. They're trying to win the headline and not necessarily do any meaningful investigation. Because if I was on that committee, you better believe that subpoenas would be propounded, and I'd be lighting a fire under some of these witnesses, the National Football League, Dan Snyder. There would be people hauled before my committee. None of that has happened yet, and that to me is inexplicable.
Well, hashtag release the emails. Let's not forget how we got started in this. So it said if someone's going to get the emails, it's going to be the House Oversight Committee. It's going to be the government. Yeah. As far as I know, the emails have not been released. So to your point, 100%, the messaging, right, is that, maybe they're filibustering, they're buying time, but I don't think that pint of blood that we expected the government to get, maybe there's a reading that they're, no stone unturned. They're looking at all these different avenues. But to your point, like the emails, that's where we got started with this whole nonsense, those thousands of pages of emails. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, I'm a glass half full guy. I'm a cautiously optimistic guy. But, it's like, Dan, at my house, we have a fireplace. My first time messing around with fires. There's still embers in the fire. This thing's still going. It's not out yet, but it's not as hot as it once was.
But we're not too far away from you and I covering the St. Louis, Missouri story and being sort of adopted Missourians. You got to show me. the show me state. And the House Oversight Committee has had this on such a long fuse that I'm beginning to wonder whether they're going to ever get anything accomplished.
Steph, Taryn, you guys both at one point, I'm not going to hold it to it now, but at one point you were both Washington football fans. What is the word on the street? Is this going to be the time that he's out? I mean, like, we didn't make the Brian Flores comparison. Stephen Ross is alleged to have bribed to the head coach to lose games. People are like, oh, maybe Stephen Ross is going to lose his team. But I'm like, I don't know. And Mike Florio said it. I know AJ hit on it. Like, I don't know if it's true, if established. Certainly bribing a coach to lose games should result in the sale of your team. But stealing money from other owners, I think, if established, right? That's another one that's seems to be a home run. What's the word in Washington?
Well, first I want to clarify, saying that I was ever a fan of the Washington football team / Redskins / now Commanders. Let's use that term lightly, fan. Can't exactly say I was a fan, but I can say that I have never been a fan of Snyder. So
what does that mean? You've been on the podcast and acknowledged that you've been a fan of the franchise.
No, I've always said that I never liked them.
No, that's false.
No, I'm not sure if we ever said that she was a fan, but she's from Maryland. I think we assumed that. I definitely grew up rooting for the Redskins. Like, Sean Taylor was my favorite player. I loved them. So
Steph, hold on. We're not letting Steph off the hook here. Are you lying then, or are you lying now? Something's happening.
Do you forget, Taryn, my plan about the egging? How could you forget that?
Yeah, but you have a love.
That's actually why he bought the $50 million house, the new house, so that we wouldn't know where to go.
Well, that's because he put like a 100-yard moat in front of it, so no one's going to throw an egg 100 yards unless you're at the combine. Okay, so I guess Taryn, stuff. There's not much to say here. I think we've hit this a bunch. Actually, no, Taryn. What?
Yeah, I came away from our conversation with AJ feeling like less optimistic that there was going to be any change. I'm just very convinced that there's nothing that's going to tip the scales for the other owners. They're willing to overlook almost everything that this guy does because, I guess they're pursuing the new stadium, but really what it is, like AJ said, they don't want to set a bar. Whatever it is, they don't want to set something that they're going to be held to. Currently, there's no standard. They police themselves, and very loosely, I might add. The guy who's in charge of policing them, they employ him. So there's almost no repercussions for any of the things that they do. And I just don't think that they're going to all of a sudden gain some sort of conscience where they're setting one for themselves. So I don't think he's going anywhere. I'll be pleasantly surprised if he does, but I don't see it happening. And I bet that they're going to get a bunch of public money to build a stadium for a team that everyone is really sick of.
Well, ever begin to think that maybe Dan Snyder has a lot of dirt on all the other owners?
That might be it.
I mean, that he has the ultimate insurance policy. 20 years of NFL meetings. And if they try to get rid of him, he's going to set the house on fire. Look what he does to all of his former partners. A former partner becomes a future defendant. That's why he's still there, because that's where he could do the least amount of harm to the National Football League. The moment they try to, terminate his ownership and dissolve his ownership interest, then, oh my God, it's going to be World War III. So the safest place for the rest of the owners is to keep him exactly where he is.
Okay, so obviously, we'll stay on top of it. As we have a busy week of sports, we got a couple things on the horizon. So my favorite segment, what to watch for. I will start us off, but before I do, let us remind everyone this podcast is sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. So they have some Masters picks, which I think we're going to get into a little bit. They have some baseball picks. They have a baseball battle royal, which is basically enter in for $5, and then it's like best man wins. So baseball opening day is around the corner, which I know, Taryn, you're going to hit. But Underdog Fantasy, I was watching, I was away for work this past week in Colorado, and I was watching NFL Network, and it was one of the primetime spots on Good Morning Football. And they go, we'll be right back or something. They go to commercial break. And the first commercial is like Underdog Fantasy. And I'm like, whoa, Underdog Fantasy, NFL Network, conduct detrimental. We're right there. We're neck and neck. We're just right there. Peter Schrager. Like, it's just like we're basically in the conversation. So, Underdog Fantasy, you want to check it out, use our promo code CONDUCT. They'll hook you up. And I'm thinking as a group, like we had some fun with March Madness. We'll have the winner on, Kevin Darby over at Ford, and we'll have him on soon enough. But I think that was fun. Maybe we'll do some pools with Underdogs, some baseball, some Masters. But that said, let us jump into what to watch for. Taryn, I alluded to it. Baseball opening days this week. How you feeling?
Well, Dan, I had a rough last weekend because of the Final Four. So really, I've been.
Want to talk about it?
Nope, don't want to talk about it at all. Never want to talk about it again.
Were you rooting for Villanova?
Never want to talk about it again.
Oh, dude. Got it.
Yeah. At least Steph was happy because of the women's Final Four. The South Carolina women were fantastic.
Yeah.
But Emily was very dejected because she had UConn, so everyone's now unhappy.
Except for me. Except for me. Go Gamecocks.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So I've been needing baseball, and I decided to treat myself for graduation. I got season tickets for the Twins. It's the first time that I've ever had season tickets for anything. But when they signed Correa, and in light of my impending graduation, hopefully, that I decided that I was going to go to a bunch of baseball games while studying for the bar. So we've got opening day. It just got pushed back. It'll be on Friday now. Really, really excited. Hope springs eternal. Baseball. It's like the most romantic sport, and it's going to be back this week. And I'm so excited to have just like 8 months of this.
So, Steph, baseball is starting up. Basketball is winding down the end of the regular season. As you know, I like to throw some futures bets all around. I have a nice ticket, speaking of sports betting, on the Phoenix Suns to win the NBA championship. I'm feeling pretty good about it. I might be hitting the ripcord early on the Suns if I'm not feeling it. But right now I got a good ticket. So I know I have a feeling you like a certain team in the Eastern Conference, though?
You could say that. The Milwaukee Bucks officially clinched a playoff berth in the Eastern Conference. So, this will be the sixth straight postseason appearance for the defending champions, Giannis the Greek Freak. I am expecting lots of 40-plus point games out of him. Unfortunately, I also did a futures bet for the Warriors at the beginning of the season, and with Steph Curry out now, that is not looking too good for me. So I wish I had the Bucks on that, but rooting for them going forward, and also looking forward to the Masters coming up. That's one of my favorite times. So we'll see what happens.
Dan, what do we got on the legislative end?
It's not really legislative. It's kind of on the executive branch of the New York State government. We're waiting for the New York State budget to be finalized. That has two repercussions in sports gambling as well as in the National Football League. The state budget was due last Friday, April 1st. They're going to finalize it within the next 24 hours, and we will find out by the end of the day, Thursday, I would think, whether the Buffalo Bills are going to receive any public monies from New York State. On our prior episode, we mentioned that there was an earmark of $850 million in the state budget, or the proposed state budget, to go to the Bills, $600 million from New York State, $250 million locally from Erie County. And it looks like that money is going to remain in the budget, and that Governor Hochul has, sort of prevailed on that issue, despite all the pushback from the New York Post and lawmakers from the southern part of the state. So it looks like the Bills are going to stay put in Buffalo if this budget item goes through, and they get $850 million, which would mean that the Bills and the NFL are going to be responsible for $550 million on a $1.4 billion overall stadium. And importantly, all cost overruns are going to be on the watch of the Buffalo Bills. So the top line dollar amount from the state, it's going to be $600 million, which I think is somewhat within reason with what the Tennessee Titans are going to go through. So that's issue number one. And then the second issue is waiting to see whether the budget will include any provision to increase the number of online sports betting licenses, as well as 3 new New York City casinos. And it's going to be a split verdict. My sources and the reporting on this issue suggest that online sports betting is going to remain intact, no changes, but the city of New York will be getting 3 casinos to be selected and cited before the end of the calendar year 2023. And that's a really big deal for the city of New York, which has no casinos at the moment. And we're talking about license fees of $1 billion per casino. So that's going to inject immediately $3 billion in the New York State budget, not to mention all the tax revenue associated with casino gambling. So that's a really big story in the world of gaming.
Let us hope you're right. The one thing we did not hit on, we hit on Masters. We hit on new bills coming down in New York, maybe some new casinos, baseball. Formula One, guys. Formula One is hot. I think everyone's now become a Formula One fan in the last year. Let's just say, Steph, I turned your dad onto it about 2 years ago. Listen, I Drive to Survive. I wasn't the first one here, but I was certainly the first wave of domestic fans. So
we're in talks to go to the Austin Formula One race in October. So
okay, well, hook me up as well. That's I'm not opposed. Well, let's see. Melbourne Grand Prix this weekend. I know Austin, Miami, Las Vegas announced a race. So maybe at some point we've had a couple people reach out and this is not a joke. Law students have reached out to do a catch-all episode on older legal controversies in Formula One. We don't discriminate. All things sports law we'll cover it. I know there's a Puerto Rican horse racing story that was on my radar. Maybe next week. But yeah, I think guys, I think we can put this episode in the books. We got a lot of moving parts here. Got a lot of different topics. Yeah, so let's do it. New York Law School is having their sports law symposium Thursday and Friday. I'm going to be there in person. So we'll continue to represent conduct well. Stephanie, you're moderating that IP panel, and yeah. So, and the one thing I did not want to forget, Taryn, huge shout out to you, my friend.
Yeah.
Taryn, all of a sudden, he's just like Mr. NIL. Taryn, what is your official title for Minnesota's NIL clinic? What do you like? The founder, the chairperson? These are some fancy titles here.
When I pass the bar, I'm going to be an adjunct professor. So I'll be teaching it. Yeah, it's really exciting. We're launching this sports and NIL clinic. It's for we're targeting college students that are involved in everything, anyone that can take advantage of those publicity rights. But I have a feeling that a lot of those will be student athletes. But this is really exciting. It's a launching pad for our sports law program, something that we haven't really had to this point. And credit to my classmates in the Sports Law Association in my year. We came in as 1L saying, man, it would be really nice if we had more sports law opportunities because we have this interest. And everyone has really worked together to get to this point. So we think that this is going to be a very attractive feature for Minnesota law to have this program. We're really excited.
Okay. So, Taryn, excellent job, buddy. We'll put this one in the books. I mentioned it on social. We are really up. I wasn't joking. The numbers are about 410% between March of 2021 and 2020. So we want to thank everyone for listening. We're now in 100 countries. Shout out to our friends in Macedonia. I'm not sure why there are people listening to us there, but shout out to you guys. And yeah, so we'll put this in the books and conductdetrimental.com @conductdetrimental. And we'll see everyone next time on another episode of Conduct Detrimental.